So I've been thinking a lot lately about the concept of surprise. In my line of work, marketing and just in life in general, surprise is usually sold to us as a good thing. A surprise birthday party, a surprise bonus at work, finding a $20 bill in a pair of jeans you haven't worn since 2019. We love the dopamine hit of the unexpected. But in the video game industry, specifically the corporate side of it, surprise has morphed into something else entirely. It's become a strategy or a weapon. Executives look at the history of gaming and they see these lightning in a bottle moments, like Apex Legends dropping out of the sky and changing the world overnight, and they think, we can buy that. They think they can manufacture a miracle. And that brings us to the story of Highguard. If you're sitting there right now asking, Kyler, what is a Highguard? That is exactly the point. That is the problem. Highguard is, or I guess was, the latest attempt by a studio to shadow drop a massive, expensive hero shooter onto a market that is already choking to death on hero shooters. And the result wasn't a miracle, it was a tragedy. We need to talk about this not just to dunk on a game that's already struggling, but because there is a fascinating, slightly terrifying lesson here about arrogance, marketing, and how disconnected game development has become from the people who actually play games. I was reading a piece over on gamesindustry.biz this morning, shout out to them for the reporting, and it paints a pretty bleak picture. The article discusses Wildlight Entertainment, the studio behind Highguard. These aren't amateurs. A lot of the core team actually worked on Apex Legends. They have the pedigree, they have the talent, they know how a shooter is supposed to feel. So they get a slot at the Game Awards. This is the Super Bowl of gaming. Millions of eyes, the most expensive ad space you can buy. And they reveal Highguard. The trailer plays, the logo flashes, and the strategy is set. We are going to replicate the Apex magic. They announce the game, and then they basically go dark. The plan was a shadow drop style launch, reveal it, let the hype simmer for a few weeks, and then boom, it's out. No long beta periods, no years of developer diaries, just pure shock and awe. But here's where the reality check comes in. Article points out that instead of shock and awe, the reaction was confusion and scorn. The internet, in its infinite wisdom and cruelty, decided Highguard was going to be the punching bag of the month. People tore the trailer apart. They mocked the art style, they called it generic, and Wildlight's response to this negativity? Silence. For 2 months. Now, putting my marketing hat on for a second, this is insane. You cannot launch a product into a hostile market and just ghost your audience. That is not a strategy, that is denial. They treated the silence like it was part of the mystery. But the audience treated the silence like the devs were hiding something. And it turns out maybe they were, because when the game finally launched, it was rough. The report mentions significant technical problems. We're talking about massive maps designed for huge team clashes, but the matchmaking was broken. So you had 6 players rattling around in a ghost town. It's like renting out a stadium for a concert and only your mom and her bridge club show up. It feels empty, it feels sad, and the consequences were immediate. Layoffs, almost instantly after launch. And this is the part that stops being funny and starts being infuriating. We have real people, artists, coders, community managers, losing their livelihoods because leadership gambled on a marketing gimmick instead of building a solid foundation. So for the next few minutes, I want to unpack this. I want to look at why the shadow drop is a trap, why the industry is obsessed with hero shooters despite us screaming stop for 3 years, and what needs to change before the entire AA and AAA space collapses on itself. Let's start with the Apex delusion. Every executive wants an Apex Legends moment, but they forgot the context of Apex. When Apex dropped, the Battle Royale genre was dominated by PUBG, which was very janky, and Fortnite, which was building focused. There was a massive hole in the market for a polished movement-based first-person shooter Battle Royale. Apex didn't just succeed because it was a surprise. It succeeded because it was excellent and it filled a void. Highguard did not have that luxury. In 2026, we do not have a void in the hero shooter market. We have a landfill. We have Overwatch 2, Marvel Rivals, Valorant, and the corpses of a dozen failed games like Concord and Hyenas. When you shadow drop a game into a saturated market, you are depriving yourself of the one thing you actually need: feedback. The games industry article makes this incredible point about early access. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, instead of trying to be mysterious, Wildlight should have been vulnerable. Imagine if they had launched Highguard in early access 6 months ago. Imagine if they said, hey guys, we know you're tired of hero shooters, but we think we have something special here. The maps are too big right now, the heroes aren't balanced, but come play it and tell us how to fix it. That builds trust, that builds a community. Players are actually incredibly forgiving if you are honest with them. Look at Baldur's Gate 3, look at Hades, even No Man's Sky eventually. We love a redemption arc. and we love being part of the process. But the shadow drop denies that process. It says, we know better than you, here is the perfect product. So when that product turns out to be imperfect, when the matchmaking breaks and the maps are empty, the audience doesn't feel sympathy, they feel validated in their cynicism. They think, ha, I knew it was going to suck. And that's the toxicity loop we are stuck in. Gamers are cynical because they've been burned by marketing hype for over a decade. Developers, or rather publishers, are secretive because they're terrified of that cynicism. So they hide the game until the last second, which only makes the gamers more cynical, which makes the publishers more secretive. It is a snake eating its own tail, and it's choking the life out of the industry. Let's talk about the money side of this, because I know some of you are thinking, Kyler, maybe they just ran out of cash. And yeah, the article touches on that. It says that the money simply ran out by February. That is a terrifying sentence. It implies that this studio was operating on a razor's edge. They needed the game to be an instant hit just to keep the lights on. This is the all or nothing model of game development, and it is destroying mid-sized studios. The report mentions that to compete in the live service space, you need significant financial headroom. Basically, you need to be able to burn money for a year while you find your audience. If you're a studio that lays off half its staff the week after launch, you never had that headroom. You were gambling. You took the rent money and put it all on black at the roulette table. And when it came up red, you handed pink slips to the people who built the wheel. It reminds me so much of the Concord situation. Remember Concord? Sony backed that. Millions of dollars, and it lasted, what, a week? It was the same issue. A generic looking trailer, a price point nobody wanted, and a complete misunderstanding of what the market actually wanted. And yet, here we are again. Highguard is Concord on a smaller budget. So why does this keep happening? Why do smart people make the same mistakes over and over again? I think it comes down to a fundamental disconnect between business metrics and fun. In marketing, we look at KPIs, or key performance indicators. We look at engagement, retention, ARPU, or average revenue per user. On a spreadsheet, a hero shooter looks like the perfect product. It has infinite retention. It has cosmetics you can sell. It has esports potential. It is a money printing machine. But that spreadsheet doesn't account for fun. It doesn't account for soul, and it definitely doesn't account for market fatigue. The article mentions that Highguard is actually a genuinely interesting mix of elements. The game isn't bad, and that's the tragedy. It's not that the devs made a bad game, it's that the game was packaged and sold in the worst possible way. They treated a new IP like it was an established franchise. You can shadow drop a Zelda game. You can shadow drop a Grand Theft Auto DLC. You cannot shadow drop generic sci-fi shooter number 45 and expect people to care. You have to make them care. And how do you make them care? You let them play it. You let streamers play it. You run open betas. You flood YouTube with gameplay. You show the flaws. You show the chaotic fun. There's a section in the article where the author asks, what if? What if they had filled that 2-month gap between the announcement and the launch with dev diaries? What if they had introduced the characters properly? What if they had fixed the 3v3 limit before launch? Those what ifs are going to haunt those developers for years. And as someone who covers this stuff, it's exhausting. I don't want to make videos about studios failing. I don't want to report on layoffs. I want to talk about cool video games. I want to tell you to go spend your money on something that will make you happy. But it feels like the industry is making it really hard to do that right now. There's a lesson here for every developer, every publisher, and frankly, every content creator. The era of the hype train is dying. We are in the era of receipts. We don't want a CGI trailer. We don't want a world premiere with a dubstep drop. We want to see the gameplay. We want to see the HUD. We want to know if there are microtransactions. We want the receipts. Highguard tried to sell us the hype without the receipts, and the market rejected it. And I want to pivot here to something a bit more personal. I play a lot of games. You guys know this. My Steam backlog is a testament to my poor financial literacy. But lately, I find myself gravitating away from these massive polished AAA live service games. I'm playing more indie stuff. I'm playing older games. Why? Because I'm tired of being treated like a user instead of a player. A user is a metric. A user is something to be monetized. A player is a human being who wants to escape reality for a few hours. The Highguard strategy, the shadow drop, the silence, the immediate layoffs, that creates a product for users. It maximizes efficiency in theory and minimizes community interaction. But games like Deep Rock Galactic or Helldivers 2 or Baldur's Gate, those feel like they were made for players. Even when Helldivers had server issues or when Baldur's Gate was buggy in Act 3, we forgave them because we felt respected. We felt like the devs were in the trenches with us. Wildlight Entertainment, and specifically the executives running it, forgot to get in the trenches. They tried to direct the war from a high tower and they didn't realize the ground had shifted beneath them until the tower fell over. So what's the big takeaway here? Is Highguard dead? Maybe. The article says it's unlikely to be the last poorly received launch of 2026. The competitive landscape is brutal, but there is a slim chance they can pull a No Man's Sky. They can put their heads down, ignore the hate, and just fix the game. But that also requires money. And based on the layoffs, money is the one thing they do not have. If there are any developers or aspiring game devs listening to this, please, I am begging you, learn from this. Do not hide your game. Do not be afraid of feedback. If your game is ugly, show us that it's ugly and tell us why it's fun. If your game is broken, tell us it's broken and ask for help fixing it. We, the gaming community, are a lot of things. We can be toxic, we can be impatient, and we can be very loud. But we are also incredibly desperate for sincerity. We are starving for it. If you give us sincerity, we will give you our time. If you give us corporate silence and a shadow drop, we will give you nothing. I look at the screenshots of Highguard in this article, these vast, empty sci-fi landscapes, and it feels like a metaphor for the whole situation. It's a beautiful, expensive world with nobody in it. And that is the saddest thing I can imagine for a piece of art. I hope Wildlight can turn it around. I really do. I hate seeing talent go to waste. But more importantly, I hope the industry looks at this scar and remembers how they got it. Stop chasing the ghost of Apex Legends. Stop chasing the shadow drop. Start chasing the fun. Start chasing the community. Because at the end of the day, when the server costs pile up and the investors come knocking, the only thing that's going to save you is us, the players. And if you didn't invite us to the party, don't be surprised when you're drinking alone. I'm curious what you guys think though. Did any of you actually play Highguard? Be honest. Did you even know it was out? Or were you too busy grinding rank in a game you claim to hate but play for 4 hours a night? Let me know in the comments. And hey, if you are one of the developers affected by the layoffs at Wildlight or anywhere else in the industry, my heart goes out to you. It's not your fault. You did the work. The strategy failed, not the art. I'm going to wrap this up before I get too depressing. I've got a backlog to clear and a cat that is currently staring at me like I owe him money. If you like this deep dive, let me know. It's a bit different from the usual news recap, but sometimes you just have to sit down and look at the wreckage to understand what happened. I'm Cyler. Stay safe, stay hydrated, don't buy pre-orders for games you haven't seen, and I'll see you in the next one.